Well, hello, America. It's kind of a bittersweet show for me. Next week, we're going to be doing kind of a retrospective. This show started on the Blaze 2011, 2012, I think. And we've been meeting here every day and every Wednesday since then. And today is the last show with guests that I'll be doing. Next week will be my final show on the Glenn Beck television program. And it's kind of bittersweet. I'm excited for the future, but I'm going to miss our time together every Wednesday. Tonight, I wanted to bring in friends and people I have a lot of respect for because we want to cover a couple of things. What are the biggest stories of this last year, and what do you think is going to happen next year? Because we're in for a wild ride. And I don't know what everybody else has selected. My stuff, I've selected at least what the biggest stories are this year. They may not be the ones that you think of. I tried to look at it more as a historian in the future going, what is last year going to be remembered for? And I could have gone in several directions, but we'll go into that here in just a second. Let me bring in Steve Deace, who is going to help us with this. My dear friend, Liz Wheeler, and apparently from some sort of police lineup is Jason Buttrill, our chief researcher.
This is my one phone call, and you got it, Glenn. That's it.
I'm not sending anybody. You can keep him. So, Steve, let me start with you. What was the biggest story of 2025?
I think the biggest story, sadly and tragically, was the most high-profile political and religious martyring in modern American history, at least since MLK, and that is our friend Charlie Kirk. It's the most viewed murder in all of world history. There's never been a time more people have seen somebody perish than what happened to Charlie. And I think he was the unquestioned future leader of the American right. And I think for those of us that knew him well,
president.
Yeah, I think there's a real possibility of that. And I think for those of us who knew him well, and Charlie used to say to me, "Hey, the T-shirt cannons and all that stuff, I love a show, but that's really to kind of disguise what's happening under the surface here. What he had built with TPUSA was a fully armed and operational battle station, really a political party within a political party." And I think that, if anything, his influence was poised to actually grow even more in the post-Donald Trump era. And I think the enemy of our souls knew that, which is why he had him shot in the throat, because he saw it too. And the void left by him, no single person could possibly fill. It'll take a team of people to even try to do it. And I think it's the biggest story, sadly, of the year.
So I will tell you that I've had this theory about this, that, evil showed up and killed him, and equal and opposite reaction to all action. But I don't think this one was equal at all. I think God showed up because it just swept the world. And if you were in that memorial or you watched it, you could feel it. It was the most incredible thing I have ever felt in a crowd. I've never felt anything like it. You could feel God come, and then they'd start talking politics, and you'd feel the spirit withdraw and then come back in. It was incredible. And I know God showed up. And I really think equal and opposite reaction to God showing up, I really believe evil showed up once that happened, because we have gone nearly insane since that. What's happened to the right, and the Treasury came out, was it yesterday, and said, we're not investigating TPUSA for taking money or money laundering or whatever, that they actually had to come out and say that Erica Kirk has been accused of being in on the murder of her husband. I've never seen anything more evil that has swept a nation faster than that.
Can I say that? Let me go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
Well, I was going to follow up. There's two things about Charlie I think that haven't been said enough. One, you're dealing with a young man working in an organization surrounded by young women. There was never once even a hint of scandal. Jilted person, nothing. No even hint of that. That's incredible integrity. Yeah. But two, we just went through an era with Biden, Glenn, where, I mean, if you took a phone call or had a ham sandwich at Mar-a-Lago before, you were under indictment by the DOJ. Charlie
Oh, yeah.
ran the largest, most profligate nonprofit in our movement. You don't think the Biden administration went through their 990 form about 666 times? I'm kind of thinking they probably did. Looking, they could find nothing. They found no hint of scandal, no hint of impropriety. And then for his legacy to be tarnished from people on the right to claim things that not even the Biden administration was able to try and dig up and go after him for, I think kind of just speaks to what you just said.
Yeah. Let me go to Liz before I get your biggest story. Any comment on this?
Well, this is also my biggest story of the year. I think it has to be. It is the most, I mean, everyone's world was rocked. I have never seen our country collectively more shocked than on the day that Charlie Kirk was murdered. And I know that I was only 10 years old on 9/11, but it rivaled, at least to my memory, people's grief. Even if they didn't know Charlie, their grief, they felt like they had the rug yanked out from under them because, and I agree with everything Steve said, but I have two other reasons why I think Charlie Kirk's assassination has to be the biggest story of the year. And one of the reasons why is because everything you described, Glenn, about the spirit coming and this spiritual revival, which, by the way, despite all the ugliness from both the left and the right, is still happening. There are still people reaching out to me on a weekly basis, curious about church, feeling drawn to God because of Charlie. I recently went to the high school reunion of my husband, and some guy he went to high school with, who he thought was very liberal, comes up to me and says, "I'm so sorry about your friend. I loved that guy. I thought this man was a raging lib." And he's like, "I've never felt grief the way that I felt after Charlie died." But two of the things that were uncovered or laid bare after Charlie's assassination that rocked people so hard was the reaction by the left. I certainly didn't expect to go onto my personal social media feeds and see friends and former coworkers celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder. I thought that would be relegated to the bowels of like online forums where little gremlins hang out. I didn't realize that this was a mainstream left-wing view that political violence is not only acceptable, but should be celebrated. And that, I think, rocked people as much as the assassination itself, because they confronted this reality that's really horrifying.
So I think that was a great revelation for people to see. It didn't necessarily surprise me. It did in the amount and who is saying it. Big names that were saying it. That kind of surprised me, but it wasn't a shock. I have to tell you, the stuff that's coming from the so-called right, that's still coming, the conspiracy theories and the Jew hatred and everything else is astounding to me. I don't know how big it is, but it's astounding. Let me go to, I guess, Palm Beach County Jail in the lineup. And Jason, did you pick Charlie Kirk as well?
I did not. I feel like an idiot now because I did not pick. How am I going to follow that?
Yeah.
Because that definitely was a huge story. I would just like to kind of tack onto it and say that, I remember watching the funeral, and I could not believe that, so many people were that spiritually directed and honed at that moment.
Yeah.
Really all over the world.
Miraculous. It was a miracle. It was a legitimate Moses-sized miracle.
Completely. And it came for a while. We were watching tweets and we were watching social media posts of people saying, "I've never gone to church before," or "I stopped when I was 10," or whatever. Now I'm seriously starting to read the Bible again for the first time. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I did not pick that. I should have. What I picked was Donald Trump's Bretton Woods moment on the global stage,
Almost picked that.
Reshape the global financial system. To me, that I'm trying to look maybe a decade ahead, because it absolutely probably could take that long for them to get there and actually fix the things that are wrong with our economy. Look at the economy this year. So a lot of the other different news that came out, the economy is broken. And we've been talking, you, Glenn, have been talking about this for the longest time. We cannot keep spending as we're spending. We cannot keep driving up the debt and deficit as high as we're doing it. It's broken. And nobody has acknowledged it ever. I mean, we'll get people campaigning on it. We'll get, the GOP all the time. "Oh, you can't spend that much money." They say that when a Democrat's in office. When we get into office, suddenly they stop talking about it. Donald Trump is really the only one that has had a plan to do something about it, and it's so huge.
And
I don't know if I agree with all of it, but at least we're going in a direction to try and fix it.
I have to tell you, I talked to him in the Oval about this maybe 4 months ago, and I said, "You're rewriting the entire world order right now. You are scrapping Bretton Woods and you're rewriting it." And he said, "Yes, I am. Very good." And it's shocking to me, Steve, Liz, that like nobody's recognizing that. Nobody is saying, "Look what he's doing. He's completely rewriting it. So the global state is no longer the key. It's the nation state. And he's doing it, and he's forcing all of these nations to come to that table and sit at the nation state table." I find it remarkable that nobody is talking about it.
I think one of the
Steve?
things that's been that has impacted what you just said, and it gets to something I'll predict later on, but China has really, since Tiananmen Square, and Jason would know this better than me, it's what he does for you professionally. But as far as I know, since Tiananmen Square, China's really only had 2 periods of civil unrest, and they have both been when Trump is in office. It's not a coincidence that on the right before COVID, they had the situation in Hong Kong, the huge uprising there in their chief financial district, right? And they're undergoing a lot of civil unrest and economic unrest right now. And I don't think that's any coincidence that our one, I guess, presumed rival for superpower in the world has faced its only 2 real existential moments since Tiananmen Square, both when Trump is in office because of the paradigm shift and disruption that you guys are talking about.
Liz, I want to get your comment on this, but I don't want to rush it. So, and then I'll give you mine, which I intentionally didn't pick Charlie Kirk for a couple of reasons. I don't think that's fully played out. I think that there is more impact coming from that. I think it was the biggest story of the year, but I try to look at it more from somebody stepping away and going 50 years from now, what happened that year that was so critical? And I'll give that to you and get Liz's comments on prison number 773. Jason
I want to
Buttrill
echo
in
something
just a
that
second.
inmate JB 101 here said before. He said, "I feel like an idiot for not."
Okay, hang on.
Kirk.
I'll get it. Hang on, I'll get it in just a second. First, let me take a quick break and tell you about Relief Factor. We're all getting older. Look at me. You don't know it, but I felt the aches and pains that come along with that kind of thing. I had horrible pain in my hands that I couldn't do this. I'm writing my notes. I couldn't write my notes before because I couldn't hold a pen or a pencil in my hand. I couldn't paint, which I love to do. I started taking Relief Factor because my wife was like not going to listen to me whine anymore unless I tried everything. And I'm like, this is not going to work. It's a natural remedy, natural stuff. I need something, from Dow Chemical. And she was like, no, you try the natural stuff. So I did, and it worked. And I mean, it totally changed my life. Daily, 100% drug-free supplement that doesn't mask your pain for a short time. It helps your body eliminate it for good. Please give it a shot. Go to relieffactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF, 1-800, the number 4-RELIEF. It's Relief Factor from relieffactor.com. So, Liz, tell me your comments on what we were just talking to with Jason.
Well, Jason said before that he should have picked Charlie Kirk. I'm going to echo that in reverse. Maybe I should have picked the Trump tariffs, and I didn't even think of that because
Huge.
They probably are the top story of 2025, or at least in the top 5, but they're definitely my favorite story because it was so interesting to me to see the reaction, even from people on the right who were very skeptical, very predicting of a financial crash, a stock market crash, essentially doomsday crying World War III over these tariffs. And Trump is just unflappable in the face of this kind of criticism. He's like, listen, I've been talking about these tariffs for 40 years. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm just going to sit here calmly while everyone loses their minds. And within 48 hours, all the countries called him to negotiate fair trade deals. And this is going to have, I said this actually about his first administration, that you think we did well financially in the first administration. We didn't even get to the part in his first administration where the tariffs bore fruit because we got COVID instead and it derailed all of that. I think, Glenn, we actually are going to see these tariffs bear fruit, and it's going to cause economists and oftentimes standard Republicans who associate tariffs with taxes, as I used to too, mea culpa, when you think of tariffs as the ends instead of as the means to an end, I think we're going to see some of the biggest financial benefits of our lifetime from these tariffs probably within the next 5 years.
I hope that you're right. I hope that you're right. Let me go to my biggest story. I thought of Charlie Kirk. I thought of the cultural fragmentation of Europe that is now irreversible. I think this is the year, you'll see it more next year, but this is the year that if you're paying attention, that you can say Europe is irreversible. It's going to break apart in whatever form it takes. We're beginning World War III, I believe. I was fascinated by how the administrative state has been taken on by the Supreme Court and how we have whiplash going on. And I don't think that we're done with that. But we have a strong whiplash to where we were going way down this road of a giant administrative state, and the Supreme Court has undone a lot of it, and hopefully even more will happen. But what I actually ended up on is probably the least sexy of everything, because I thought, and I said this to the president, and he disagrees with me on this, but I said, I believe you're going to be remembered as the AI president. Truman may have dropped the bomb, but it was FDR that did the Manhattan Project. We are not going to see the full impact of what he's done, but he is the guy, like it or hate it. He is the guy who has said energy and AI are a priority. Rare earth minerals, priority. He has set us up to be able to lead, not just survive, and not be on somebody else's teat or a giant, collective, but to actually survive and stand on our own 2 feet and help the rest of the world be free. He's the guy who did it, and it happened last year, or this year. We just announced the Energy Department just announced they're going to be building, I think it's 10 new nuclear plants. Who would have thought that was going to happen just 3 years ago? It is, and I think they're going to have lasting impact. Any comments on that from anybody?
Yeah, I have a comment on it. Jason and I actually did an episode, I think it was last week, Jason, on the President Trump's attacks on the narco terror boats from Venezuela. And I actually think this is connected to what you're talking about. AI as a topic does sound, it's not as sexy as the other topics. I think you're right. But the reason is because it's complex and people don't fully understand how AI works, whether it needs to be regulated or deregulated, what the risks are. People almost would rather just be like, I'll just use Grok and AI's fun and fine for that. But when Jason and I were talking about what's really behind those narco terror strikes, and he was explaining the oil reserves in Venezuela and how it's not just a conflict between the United States and Venezuela, it's a proxy war over these rare earth minerals and over these reserves, these oil reserves, because of the AI race. It actually makes what Trump is doing and what Pete Hegseth's military is doing with these narco terror boats, it makes it make a lot more sense. So I think you're right in a sense that Trump understands the big picture, the chess game of AI, probably more than, even me as one of his constituents do.
I think he understands things. I was on the road with him while he was running for re-election. And he said to me at one point, it's going to be a big story next year. This was maybe in June before the election. It's going to be a big story. I said, no, you watch. What? Panama Canal. That's all he said. I said, Panama Canal. And he said, watch, trust me, big story next year. One of the first things he did was take on the Panama Canal. And this is all what's happening in Venezuela. All the rare earth minerals. He was talking about Greenland. He was talking about Canada. Europe is over. They're begging now for rare earth minerals. They've been lost in the dust. He was way ahead of this, and it's remarkable. Steve, any comments?
Well, this actually, not to get ahead of us, but this touches on one of my predictions for next year. I think you're going to see the United States and China essentially trade Taiwan and Venezuela. I think China.
Hang on, don't go there. Don't go there yet. Don't go to your predictions yet.
But I will also say, living in a rural state, Glenn, the AI thing is very contentious here. okay? Because the question that we're really answering is, yes, we need the technology, but are the data centers the 21st century job equivalent to, I got carpal tunnel working in the textile mill, I got, bad lungs from breathing in all the soot in the coal mine, or the steel mill, right? Are those the new steel mill, smokestacks, the new coal mines, the new textile mills? And so that's just the trade-off for a quality of life where you can have a middle-class living, going directly into the workforce, or does it represent something un-American? You're like a cog in a machine. You're just sitting there pushing buttons all day. This is a big debate happening in terms of quality of life in a rural state like where I live right now.
So I don't think people really understand, and if you're sending your kids to college just out of rote, you're foolish. You're wasting your money. I texted Elon Musk and said, "Hey, for my museum, I'd like to buy one of the first Tesla robots to make sure we have one for the museum." And he texted back and said, "Well, they come out next year, but none of them will be available till at least 2027 because everything I make is going to go to Tesla first." Excuse me? They can make a lot of robots in a year. And you're going to see Tesla. I don't know if they're going to be laying people off or what, but it is going to be fully integrated by 2027, 2028 with real robotics. That's remarkable. Jason.
Yeah, I kind of want to just react off of what Liz said also, because I see a lot of these stories as connected. So whether I see the Bretton Woods moment happening between Trump and remaking basically the global financial system, the AI question, what's going on in Venezuela right now, what's going on with China over in Taiwan. Rare earth minerals. I put another story down as one of my big stories for this year that maybe wasn't a big mainstream story of the year, even though it was kind of big. But it was when China tried to basically cut off all refinement of rare earth minerals and hold the rest of the world hostage. Then President Trump got a coalition together and said, "Oh, I don't think so," and China capitulated. Now, what does all this have to do? Everything is about to change, Glenn. Everything between the financial system, what we do, the economy, what people that just got out of college, if they decide to go to college, what job are you going to have in the next few years? Everything is about to change, and we are on the cusp of that. And I don't want to get too far into my predictions either, what I see going forward, but we are at that time. We're in a 12-month time when we're going to see the direction of all that happen. Whether that is foreign, whether it's geopolitics, whether it's potential of war, what happens with our economy, everything is about to change. And this is going to be the year we see it.
I think, that is the umbrella of, my prediction is everything is about to change. And I'm not sure people really understand that. Before we get into the predictions, let's kind of talk about that concept that I don't think the world has ever seen in modern times, maybe World War II. But I'm not sure I think it's even maybe bigger than the end of World War II. And it's going to come down fast where literally everything is going to change. Do people understand that, Steve?
I don't. I think there's this notion, for example, going back to AI. I think there's a notion, I think there's some truth to it, that it's just the next stage in evolution, right? When we went from an agrarian to, an urban industrialized society in the late 19th and 20th, early 20th century with the Industrial Revolution. And what will that do to our identity and legacy as people and things of that nature? Clearly, that was a big step of evolution. Then you bring in mass communications with Marconi and the radio, the television a decade or two later, right? And obviously that made us more connected than ever before. And the internet took that to a different level. But what AI presents in terms of changing everything is we go now from technologies that can help you make decisions and influence the choices that you make to making those decisions and choices for you. And I think that takes things to an entirely different level, especially in our current largely godless state as a culture corporately. I think it definitely takes things to a different level.
Liz, do you think, because I've been talking about this since the 1990s, and back in 2005, maybe, I was talking about this time that I thought then would happen by 2035, where you would have this massive displacement. I mean, we're talking 30, 40% unemployment. And the people would pick up pitchforks. And I said there is going to be collusion between the government and Silicon Valley, because the government's going to need the protection of Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley is going to need the protection of the United States. And then the banks will be in that as well, because I thought people would take to the streets. Do you see that happening? If real displacement happens, how are we going to deal with that?
Well, in some senses, I think we're beginning to see that already. If you look at just this past year, I mean, look at the not organic, not grassroots, not peaceful protests, these riots over, and they're always ostensibly over anti-ICE, anti-mass deportations, but they're really not. They're really the beginning of this sort of Marxist vanguard, and they're just using politics, the current political hot topic, as their excuse to engage in this violence. I think human beings, unfortunately, are prone to violence. I have to say, though, when it comes to AI and how it's going to reshape our entire, not just our economy, but our way of life, the medical system, everybody's jobs, I have to say, I don't know if that's going to cause mass displacement or not. Because if you would have asked me the same question about the Industrial Revolution in the late 19th century or the early 20th century, I probably would have said yes to that too. And yet we saw this sort of natural flexibility and innovation. And yes, it was a hard shift, but we figured it out. When there were jobs that were eliminated, we created new jobs. Right. And there's always going to be a need for people. So are we going to see a mass displacement from AI? I don't know. But I think if there is an inkling of it, of AI replacing jobs that's starting to cause this discontent, you know the political operatives will immediately take advantage of that for their own political gain. That's what I think we need to be on the watch out for.
I'm going to take a break, but I want to say something and get you to comment on this, Jason, when we come back after the break. I think we're all in agreement that there's a color revolution going on. Would we all agree on that? We all believe yes or no? Yeah. Okay. Color revolution. And we believe that the Marxists are doing it, and, the Islamists are doing it, or the corporations are doing it, whatever it is. There's a hierarchy of all of this. I put it out on the chalkboard when I was at Fox, the Islamists, the anarchists, the, what was it? The, communist, socialist will all work together to destabilize the world. And everybody at the time said they'll never work together. They don't agree on anything. Why would they do that? And it's because there's a common enemy. They want to destabilize the system to replace it. And then they'll work it out after. But it'll either be the Islamists that actually control the world, or it will be the politicians with the corporate boards, the banks and everything else that will do it. And it's interesting, as I was listening to you, Liz, I thought to myself, BLM, that was BLM Inc. We know that was a manufactured thing. We know that corporate America got into bed with the Uber left because of Occupy Wall Street. What if all of these riots and everything else that we've seen, what if they were actually a product to be able to have these things happen on the street, destabilize, but also to be able to say, we've got to crack down now. So they can crack down, but they're actually still kind of in control of everything, but they lay the framework of complete control. So if there is real unrest around the world because of AI, which I believe they at least are seriously considering, the framework's already there. They can just clamp down quickly. I'd love to hear your thought on that, Jason, when we come back in just a second. First, let me tell you about Preborn. This Christmas, as we celebrate the gift of life, you have a chance to share a gift with a mom who is feeling alone and unsure what to do. There's probably a woman sitting in her car right now, young lady sitting in her car, trying to decide which door to walk through, Preborn or Planned Parenthood. She's looking for hope, but she has no hope because there's nobody in her life that is supporting her. Nobody. This is rarely something that we really think about. We think about saving the babies, but we don't think about saving the moms. And we've got to, God wants us to save both souls, mom and baby. You can't just save mom or save the baby and then just discard mom. Mom is totally alone. This is what preborn does. They invite her in. They have her see her baby on an ultrasound. When she hears the heartbeat, she sees the baby. She's like 80% more likely to choose life. But then she still has things that she's like, I can't do it. I'm totally alone. I have no support. I don't have the money. I don't know baby clothes or food or whatever. Preborn helps her through that for the first 2 years. Mom and baby. This, I think, is the way God would want us to do it. Donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. Pound 250, say the keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/Glenn. That's preborn.com/Glenn. All right, Steve, tell me your prediction for 2026.
My first big prediction for next year is, I alluded to this earlier. Sorry about spilling the beans, Glenn. I think that China and the U.S. are going to effectively swap Taiwan and Venezuela. I think with the disruption that is happening in markets and where we are in terms of a long-term paradigm shift, I think we're not just going to sit there and just let Venezuela, with maybe the largest oil reserves in the world, just go on the bye-bye here in our own hemisphere. And I think those provocations will then have China say, well, we're going to do the exact same thing to Taiwan here and nail down our hemisphere in region as well. So that's my first big prediction for 2026.
Okay, so hang on just a second. Let me just get the military expert. Jason, any comment on that? Because that's a pretty crazy idea.
Steve is right on the money with
Wow.
what I'm expecting as well. And I think the year 2027 is going to be a big year. We've always heard about the year 2030 as a big deal on the left. Well, 2027, when you hear what people actually say, is a huge deal, which means we have 12 months leading up to 2027 coming up very, very shortly. One of those is China going and reclaiming Taiwan by the year 2027, or at least being ready to do it.
Steve, I know you have more, but if we have time, I'd like to come back and ask you, how do we deal with the chip makers in Taiwan? Because we cannot allow China to have all those chip makers. They make the highest end chips. All right, next
that's their leverage to what we're doing in the rare earth minerals and oil markets in Venezuela. That's their chip. But I think we're going to see at least one elected official somewhere in the world next year claim to have directly communicated one-on-one with non-human intelligence. I think we're going to see that. I think the amount of activity, PSYOP, whatever you want to call it, on the UFO front, UAP front, NHI front. I mean, this thing is ramping up. The number one selling movie in America right now on Amazon, the biggest website in the world, is Age of Disclosure. Spielberg has not directed a film since what was supposed to be his last movie, which was semi-autobiographical several years ago. He's come out of retirement to do another disclosure film on UFOs next year. The pressure on this is amping up, ramping up, and I think we're going to see at least one elected official somewhere in the world claim to have communicated with non-human intelligence next year.
I gotta tell you,
not,
between those two
that claim will be
predictions,
there.
it will be a remarkable year if both those things happen. If one of those happen, Liz.
It was my impression that elected officials all over the world regularly communicate with demons. So I don't know if this is going to be a first-time encounter if we're talking about people in political office or not. I was very torn on what my top prediction for 2026 would be. I think we're going to see some significant cabinet turnover in the Trump administration, which is significant to us. But I decided not to choose that because I don't know if that will be significant in a sense to the world, not just to, the Republican apparatus. I also think that we'll see.
Wait. Let me ask you on that, because there's a picture of Pam Bondi on the screen when you say that. I
promise I didn't pick the picture.
No, I know. I think that if you don't start seeing people going at least into a trial early next year, that's a huge problem on the right. Huge problem. And Pam Bondi is responsible for it. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was serious when I said I didn't pick the picture, but I actually do think Pam Bondi will be replaced or at least forced to significantly change her tactics. Because listen, we voted for Trump because we want justice for all of the deep state weaponization of the government targeted at us. And we have not seen that from the Pam Bondi Department of Justice. We've seen it return to reality, reclaiming girls' sports for women and getting rid of critical race theory. All that's fine, but that's sort of a restoration. That's not an active prosecution of people who committed crimes against us. And the Trump voter demographic has patience. We're generous. We understand that we're up against, this conglomerate enemy. But I think people are starting to run out of patience. So I think we will see Pam Bondi turn over in the first half of next year. But here's my real prediction. Are you ready for this? My real prediction is that a member of the U.S. Congress will be denaturalized and removed from Congress and deported from the United States of America. And I know people have been talking about this.
I wonder
who that could be.
Well, here's the thing.
It is. Did they marry their brother?
Your predictions, Liz, you told us your predictions were black-pilled. I'm already hyped. I'm inspired by that prediction.
Are you ready for this angle, though? People talk about Ilhan Omar marrying her brother. And I do think, by the way, that there's good evidence of that, especially that recent Daily Mail report that demonstrated that she was married to another Somali individual, but only religiously, not in a civil ceremony. Then years later, while she was still with that husband, she married the brother, and it was in a civil ceremony that was conducted by a Christian minister, ostensibly because any Muslim cleric would have recognized the familial relationship. Correct. That's a great argument, and I think that if I were the Department of Justice, I'd go after that. But here's the better argument.
I did that show years ago, and we laid it all out, and it is very, very convincing. Very convincing. Okay,
it is.
So your other argument.
It is. But here's the argument for Ilhan Omar's deportation. The reason that she gained citizenship to the United States is because her father fled Somalia, ostensibly because he was afraid of the Marxist communist regime. But truly, the reason, and if you look at the evidence, it's quite compelling, the reason that he fled was because the regime had been toppled by the people, and he was a member of that regime. He was actually a high-ranking military official. He tried to hide that association so that he could claim asylum here in the United States, but he was in charge of propaganda for that communist regime. And that's the reason. I mean, that's immigration fraud right there. Ilhan Omar was naturalized as an American citizen because her father's asylum claim was accepted. But if that was fraudulent, then Ilhan Omar's naturalized citizenship status is itself illegitimate to begin with. And I think, if I were the Department of Justice, this is not idle gossip or political mudslinging. This is our laws that have been blatantly and provably violated.
Yeah, I have to tell you, are you sure we didn't do like an Operation Paperclip with Somalia? Because I would not write that off with the Biden administration. What were we doing? Okay, I'm going to take a quick last break, and then we're going to come to Jason, get his predictions, and then finally mine, which are not nearly as exciting as your guys. I kind of hope, Liz, I do hope that yours come true. And I strangely kind of hope in a way, Steve, that yours comes true, because I would love to see this. I don't want to live it. I'd rather see it in a movie, but some powerful predictions. All right, more in a minute. First, let me tell you about Home Title Lock. There is a strange moment that happens when you buy a home. You stop thinking of it as a structure and you start thinking of it as the place where your entire life now fits. From the big memories down to the tiny little forgettable routines. And because it feels so permanent, so rooted, you almost never imagine that someone could take it away without ever stepping foot inside. But that's exactly how the home title fraud works. They don't have to break a window. They don't have to pry open a door. They just slip through in the paperwork, the forged signatures, the digital records that most people never ever think to check. Home Title Lock. They exist to monitor your title. They warn you if it's being tampered with. Criminals target the online title system precisely because no one's watching it. Not the bank, not the lender, no one. Not even the county office that stores the records. And once the thief transfers your title to themselves, you're the one left proving the house you live in is still actually yours. AI is changing the world. Do not let it change your name on the home title. Go to HometitleLock.com right now. Use the promo code Glenn. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code Glenn. Okay, Jason, your predictions for 2026.
I mean, everybody else's were so much fun, and now I'm going to be bad news Buttrill over here. Okay. I believe I'm just coming up with nothing but bad news.
You've done a hard time.
I'm going to go back to what I said before about 2027 being a very, very key year. If you haven't read the academic paper AI 2027, you need to do that right now, because that lays out where it's basically the leaders of the world in AI kind of got together, all the academics, and they said this is the timeline we see everything going in. They lay it out like month by month. Like they talk about establishing economic energy zones within. This is like happening globally, so with all different countries. It's crazy, but it goes through like a very, very wild scenario, I guess bad scenario, to a not so bad scenario that would turn out to be okay. You need to read that though to see where we're going, and where you start to see this is there's economic flashpoints all over the world. Now I see going through this year, I see kind of a build up towards that in 2027. So we have 12 months, which means as AI is looking to advance, you're seeing multiple different countries that are trying to compete with each other in energy, and rare earth minerals, things like that. What does that mean? That means flashpoints in different regions all over the world that are leading up to potential conflict, to war. We're already starting to see that. You see Donald Trump, what he's doing in our hemisphere. I don't see this really as a Venezuela thing. I see this as an American hemisphere. That's what is being argued and fought over right now. China and what Steve Deace laid out with Taiwan. I believe that is exactly the direction they're going. Wow. They've told us that's the direction they're going. But now you're seeing other countries. Right this week, you saw Japan, things kicking off between Japan and China. They see this. Pretty soon you're going to have the Aussies thinking the same thing. They already think the same way. Everybody in that region, you're going to see various different flashpoints within each different region as they're all worrying about what's about to happen with this technological change that we're about to have.
Gosh, when does the average person wake up to what their life is going to be like, what they're going to go through in the next couple of years?
You know, I think they really already are. At least I know the youth is. We had that conversation this morning, really good on radio, about how are the youth are thinking right now. Like my son, I've spoken to him at length about what are you going to do, buddy? Like, you know, you're in college right now, but for what? Once he really digs into it and looks at it, he knows a lot of the jobs are just not going to exist. But at the same time, he's looking at goals that he might have. I want to be able to, own a home, own a piece of the American dream. And a lot of that's going away. Like that was another big story this year, where it's the age has never been so high for first time homeowners. They're being priced out.
All right, so here are the ones that I'm, and I should have ended with you guys and not me, because it's so much better. I think in 2025 was the year, as I said, that we started really understanding AI and what is coming to some degree, and we understood, energy is going to be a problem. I think 2026 is going to be the first year that we see things like Texas having rolling brownouts for a week at a time. I think you're going to start to see the strain on the grid by the end of next year in ways that you would never have expected in the United States. It's just growing exponentially. I think you're also going to feel more towards the end of the year, this political whiplash. I'm really concerned about, Liz, you said, and they're coming after us and they're not going to jail. Here's a reason why they have to go to jail. Somebody has to have a slap on the wrist, and a slap across the face, and others have to go to jail. Otherwise, what's coming back our way is going to be a return with vengeance. These people have shown us they don't mind killing people they disagree with. They're certainly not going to have a problem putting people in jail that they disagree with. If the Republicans blow this next election, it's more than just investigations. You're going to see real hardship. And then in 2028, if whoever is running on the GOP side doesn't win, if Donald Trump can't codify what he's done, political whiplash unlike we have ever seen. But here's my main prediction, and it's a little out there. I think next year is going to be a huge year historically for the beginning of civil rights movement. I think we are going to see massive civil rights cases come to the courts next year, and they're only going to get bigger and bigger. Next year, you're going to see what is freedom of speech when it comes into AI? Is that freedom of speech? You're going to see schools mandating certain rules and regulations with AI, without AI, and for surveillance. You're going to start seeing surveillance things that are going to cause some real civil rights issues. The biggest is, and I don't think it'll happen in 26, but it's coming soon. Can you turn it off? Can a company turn off something that you have now pretty much mated with, that you believe is your spouse, that you believe you are in love with? Can they turn it off, or does it have any kind of rights? And the last part of the AI thing is next year, and we talked about this on radio this morning. Actually, I think we talked about it off air, Jason, was we were talking about how to use it as a tool and to always remember it as a tool. Next year, I think you're going to see the country and the world break into two classes of people: those who use it and those who are going to be ruled by it. If you're not engaging with it in a smart and effective way right now, you will be ruled by it. And that's going to become very apparent next year. Any comments?
Well, I think it goes to what I said earlier. What's different about this technology is we have progressively intensified and personalized the amount of influence technology can wield in how we make decisions or why. What we're talking about now is a technology that is going to make decisions for us. We're talking about the loss of individual agency and autonomy, but voluntarily. A godless people will want to be ruled by it. They will say, I want you to make these decisions for me. Yes.
There's a meeting at the White House today on AI and technology, and I know that they are being presented at the White House. I'm anxious to see how it went today. They are being presented with ideas of parents need to make sure there is no anthropomorphic dolls or anything else under 16 years old, and that the algorithms are completely transparent. Otherwise, we as parents and our kids are in real trouble. Guys, I got to cut this now. I've only got a couple of seconds left, but thank you so much. This is the second to last show. Next week is the last Glenn Beck television show, and it's going to be a fun one, a little retrospective and an end of an era. So we will see you next week. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow on radio. God bless from South Florida and the Atlantic coast. Good night, America.